Meeting over, so I hand you over to Larry Warren.
Thanks a lot. You know, these things are only as good as you are, and I have to say our next speaker, you might know, he's right there. He is mentor with a guy named Graham Birdsell. He was really just, well, the subject kind of went in the ground with him about 10, 12 years ago. And I knew that. A lot of people knew that. And it was always like, geez, who's going to pick up the reins? Who's going to attempt to do it? And I have to say, I know where my allies are. I know who they were most of the time. But this is one of them. He sees things for as they are. It was his job, it was his livelihood, it kept him alive, he was trained to do it. And I respect people like that expect evidence to the best of someone's ability. And your host here is just that kind of guy. He's a huge ally of Rendlesham Forest. He doesn't play games with it. I'm talking from a personal view that can be reflected on the subject, and he does. We need more folks like that with the background. We need, and thank God this guy is doing what he does. He invites me out. This is my third year with Gary. I come out, I co-host sometimes, and it's a joy to do. It's just seeing family, their family, the staff of family. They're the best. Give the staff a hand for this thing. Nothing happens without you. And so give yourselves a hand too, and then I'm going to introduce you. Ladies and gentlemen, that means a lot to me. Yeah, I have an utmost respect. Gary Heseltine.
Thank you very much. No, I'm using a headset. Right, okay. All right. Is there anybody in the room first who doesn't know who I am? See your hand up if you don't. I usually say, please get out of the room. My daughter's saying that. She's a bad thing.
Make it up.
Anyway, for the handful of people who don't know me, my name is Gary Heseltine, and for 24 years almost, nearly 24 years, I was a police officer in the British Transport Police. Prior to that, I was in the Royal Air Force Police for 6 years. My 3 years in the Royal Air Force Police, I worked on nuclear weapons bases, exactly the same, doing exactly the same job as Larry Warren, John Burroughs, etc. That's why I knew there was a lot more witnesses, and that's why I got involved in the Rendlesham Forest case. I know it's a nuclear base because of the numbers involved. I knew there were many more witnesses, and there are many more witnesses. But that's not the title of my lecture. 24 years as a police officer, I was an advanced interviewer of suspects and witnesses. I did not seek promotion because I hated the petty politics as you went higher into the job. And you were literally desk bound as well. You had to become a yes man, had to have your brain removed. I wasn't prepared to do that. So I remained as a detective constable for over 19 years, right up to my end. So I did a bit in uniform, and the rest of the time I was what was called a career detective. I think I know what evidence is, should stand up in a court of law. That is my criteria. I had a childhood sighting, which I, in this presentation, don't really have a chance to do. Suffice to say that I saw a UFO at the age of 16 in Scunthorpe, where I'm from, Ashby, Scunthorpe, the suburb of Scunthorpe. And I was with my then girlfriend, and we saw a bright white light, nothing, no spaceship, nothing, bright white light, background of stars, and it seemed to trigger a number of power cuts in the area. Cutting a long story short, I then moved to a second geographical area. I used my cycle to get to a second position, and was able to predict, as ludicrous as it sounds, the exact moment when the second power cut was going to go ahead, because I looked at my semi-detached house, put my hand over my head in the garden as it came over the rooftop, and guess what? As soon as it went past me and I was therefore behind its flight path, the entire area plunged into a power cut. How the hell can I predict a power cut? So at that point there, I realised there must be a connection to the objects that I'd seen. How the hell can I predict a power cut? It's impossible. So, and funnily enough, one of the first things that I got was actually the very last book written by Major Donald Kehoe. Of all the books that I could have got, having had no interest in the subject whatsoever, I get a book by Major Donald Kehoe, who turns out to be absolutely one of my world heroes in this subject, because he was a military man, and he's called, as he saw it, and a lot of his military friends who were very high-ranking were telling him these great pilot cases, and he was saying, this is E.T. even though officially the Air Force, the Army, etc., were not allowed to say so because of the constraints and regulations, etc. But he went public, and and again, he's a hero of mine, and I really do believe that there's some. It's a word. I use the word synchronicity because it's a word that I've never even heard of until I started lecturing on UFOs. But over the course of years, I don't know about other researchers, but so many strange things happen that you kind of think, well, is it meant to be? And I don't believe in God or anything like that. But there are so many things that happen that you think, God, this is a coincidence. And what a juncture that I have a site in, no interest. I then go to my local second-hand bookshop. Now, you got any books on flying saucers? Because it was an unidentified flying object, didn't have a clue about it. The first book I get is by what turns out to be an extremely important person in the history of the subject, Major Donald Keogh. And sure enough, in his last book, 1973, he had wrote a section about the 1965 New York blackout. So straight away there was some kind of validation that the UFO light, whatever, had caused a series of power cuts. So, I mean, what a coincidence that is on this very strange route. If somebody had said to me, Gary, you will speak at the Washington Press Club, which is the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., 2 blocks short of the White House, at a podium that the likes of John F. Kennedy has spoken at, Gorbachev, Reagan, etc., etc. How weird that would have been. I wouldn't have had a clue. But that actually happened. And those people, people don't realise the significance of where we've been sometimes. And that was a huge honour at the 2013 Citizens' Hearings, for those of you who are aware of it. For those who are not, it was a mock congressional hearings where basically 40 experts from around the world, sometimes witnesses, researchers, got together and gave testimony before a former senator and 5 congressmen and women who collectively had a service of 80 years public service. And within one day of a 5-day mock congressional hearing, they stood up, Caroline Kilpatrick, Congresswoman, stood up and said, based on one day, you should have full congressional hearings. Which was a kind of like euphoric moment, and everybody was clapping and whatever, which would really go on in a congressional hearing. But it was a kind of a significant thing, because we presented evidence just in one day that said there should be a re-examination of the best evidence around. Now, my lecture today, as you can see on the board, is E.T., the media and world politics. I could have just looked right there, really. But basically, this is my take. I do lots of lectures, so I do prepare different ones. But this is something that I think is more personal to me in the sense of people are always saying to me, what about disclosure, what's ET's agenda, and things like that. So I thought I'd give you my take on that. Okay, so let's see where we go. Can we prove that ET is real? Well, from my evidential background, I should know what evidence is and what would stand up in a court of law. If, for example, somebody ran into the back of the room now and said, there's a flying saucer outside, and it's in this building, in almost everyone, I would have thought, would rush to the door to try to see if there was indeed a UFO. And if you did go outside and did see the UFO hovering above this building, what would you all become? Witnesses. Some of you, undoubtedly, would get your mobile phones out and go, shh, 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 without the noise, please. It sounds good, doesn't it? Some of you would be maybe fearful. Some of you would start taking notes, perhaps. We'd all react in a slightly different way. The reality is you would all become witnesses to UFO sighting. Now, if, for example, let's turn it around. So you're witnesses to UFO sighting. Nobody seems to give a rat's ass about that. Sorry, that's right. There's no children except Megan in the back. She can accept that, I think. Okay? Because nobody takes it seriously in the mainstream. Well, think about this. If there was a gunshot outside now, we might just do the same. Perhaps not everybody get up because they don't want to get shot, but some people undoubtedly would rush outside to see what the noise was. And if they saw a man running away with a shotgun, would you consider them a vital witness in a police investigation? Yes, you would. Because you'd be able to obtain descriptions. How many were involved, maybe. If there was any vehicles nearby, was he running towards me? All manner of things. All your descriptions of the suspect would probably be very different. Because Human perception is difficult. And some people would say the man was black, somebody was white, he was yellow, whatever. He had two heads almost. That kind of perception change does happen. However, the key thing is, there was a noise outside, sounded like a gunshot, and some of us ran outside, and I saw a man running away with what looked like a weapon. The story is consistent. Now, if those two scenarios, one is taken very seriously, isn't it, in mainstream? The man, the shooting, that's credible. You become a very credible, great witness. And if you don't know each other, you become independent witnesses, which is even better. You're untainted by anybody else. You all go out, you all give your own perception. What the hell difference is there between a UFO gunshot, a UFO sighting that's outside, and a gunshot incident? Nothing. You still become witnesses. And everybody will describe things in different ways, and everyone will give slightly different testimony. But what could we get? We could get the photographs. Those photographs become a piece of physical evidence. Now, it's on a digital phone. The phone could be recovered. The phone itself becomes GH1. If I then want to extract the digital images, they're sub-images from GH1, exhibit GH2. If I then want to make further enhancements, it's GH3, sub-exhibit of GH2, which you've taken it from, and you go down the line. It's a chain of possession. Everything is logged, and that's how you create exhibits. Exactly the same. So don't think that a UFO incident is something bizarre. It deals with exactly the same thing. It produces witnesses. It often produces physical evidence. Think of it in the gun, the knife, and the murder kind of thing. But this could produce CCTV, radar tapes, telemetry data. Telemetry data is a bit different because that produces something written. When something is in document form, it produces documentary evidence. For example, and I often use this as a quote, if AJ, not that he would, drove a car on the wrong side of the road, because he's Brazilian, but anyway, he drove a car, and he'd had a drink, he got pulled by the police. I mentioned this yesterday. They'd say, breathe into this little device, and he would breathe, and they'd say, I'm sorry, Mr. Gerard, you're under arrest because you've blown over the limit. So he then gets carted away, much to his chagrin, to the police station, where they then say, breathe into this big machine. The big machine then produces a written digital printout. It produces a document. And when it goes to court for drink driving, they hold up this piece of paper that says, on such and such a day, you blew positive. This is my documentary piece of evidence that says you are guilty of being over the limit. What's the difference if it's a UFO site? Yeah, if you're a witness, and we get a statement from you, we could have this in a court of law. Especially if it's multiple corroboration. Especially if it's backed up with radar data, if it's a pilot case. Especially if it's a multiple witness pilot case. This is all evidence that could be presented in a court of law. No different whatsoever. Think about that. There is no difference between a UFO sighting. It doesn't create strange new people. Think about this situation. What an irony is that a pilot... I like this straw poll. Put your hand up if you've ever been on a plane. Put your hand up. All right, put your hand down. Who has not ever been on an aircraft? Okay, there's always a couple. All right, but the majority have been on a plane. What do we give to the pilot when we get on that plane? Something very simple that we actually give him. Trust, but I actually think it's more than that. Sorry, somebody said it?
Responsibility.
Yeah, but something even more basic. Your life. So how comes that when that pilot, that very same pilot, sees a UFO and his flight crew and his navigator and his chief engineer see it and some of the passengers see it, that he's still ridiculed? How can it be that we give our lives to somebody, complete trust to get us from A to B without crashing, with this expertise, yet suddenly we can reduce them to being nutters? Doesn't make sense, does it? And 3,000 commercial pilots worldwide have gone on the record. Strange, isn't it? Okay. So as I say, Can we prove ET is real? From my point of view, when you look at what's called the circumstantial evidence picture, I've been in a Crown Court, which is the highest kind of court you can in a criminal court, and our judge once, on a rape case, said what he called his definition of circumstantial evidence. And it always kind of resonated with me, because most police cases are not black and white in the sense of you have all the evidence, you have some of the evidence, conflicting evidence. But to go to court, you have enough evidence to charge somebody, you then appear at court, and then you give all the details, prosecution, defence, and a jury says, yeah, yeah, no. Basic law around the world in civilised society. In reality, that might not work for everybody else. But what we can say with evidence is the definition that he gave was, if you have enough pieces of the jigsaw, you can create an overwhelming and compelling case in which a jury can make a reasoned decision. So think about this, and I kind of like took my own analogy. Most cases that go to court are circumstantial evidence cases. If you don't have all the pieces, it's not 100%. So we go to court regularly with circumstantial evidence cases. Think about it this way, if I had a 100-piece jigsaw, kitchen jigsaw, 100 pieces, small jigsaw, but if I had 70% of the pieces, and I go, I should say there's a very strong chance with 70% that we'd know what was in that picture. Would you agree? You put all the pieces in, you begin to make an outline of what was in the picture. 70%? Well, that's kind of why we look at the circumstantial evidence case. We may not have all the pieces, and certainly when we look at Rendlesham Forest, extremely complicated. Clashing testimony, different nights, multiple witnesses, civilian witnesses, military witnesses. But I should say we're about 70% that makes it ET, in my opinion. When I do like a cold case review of everything, strip away the personality, let's just look at the facts and what we already know. And with 70%, we've got a pretty compelling case. So think about that. Nearly all court cases are circumstantial. And in my opinion, in the general population, generally accepted, 95% of everything can be explained away, identified, etc. I agree with all that. In the accepted everyone sense, of reporting science. And then when you do further investigation, you end up with perhaps 2 or 3%. I would say about 3% that defy explanation after investigation. Not before investigation, after. And these are the pilots who are chasing ET in broad daylight, and these aircraft are doing this. Instant acceleration, instant stop. Instant acceleration, instant reverse. Straight up. Straight down. I'm visible, I'm not visible. And I don't usually make a sound at all, even at close quarters. After about 70 years of research from around the world, those are pretty much the general characteristics of ET and their technological ability. Do you like special effects? Okay, so for me, in those few small percentages, it's definitely there, especially with these broad daylight pilots chasing, etc. Okay, let's move on. So for me, it's real. Conclusion. C. Bassett, who many of you will be aware of, I believe was supposed to be making a documentary on the money they got from, I believe it was Thomas Clearwater, about $1 million, which is what funded the citizens' hearing. But I think he basically went way over the budget, and that documentary has never been made, which is a real shame, because the testimony from these citizens' hearings, as some of you will have seen on the clips, is overwhelming, but that was meant to be in the cinema. They were trying for a cinema release. Very disappointed that that hasn't happened. Still might, but it doesn't look like it's happening. Oops. Oops. All right, oh, what's that? Right. What you've got to understand, though, and Stanton is absolutely the prime guy to talk about classification and secrets and etc., is that there are two worlds in which we live in. There is the world of classification, military intelligence, where you have the necessary need to know. Do you have the need to know clearance to know about this, that and the other? And that doesn't apply to any of us in this room, unless there's some spook hiding away under the guise of somebody else. We don't have the need to know. We're never going to get to know those secrets. So what we have to rely on is what's called the public domain. This is where pilots, military, commercial, etc., astronauts, cosmonauts, radar operators, sonar operators underwater, because UFOs are often seen underwater and detected, air traffic controllers, those people who are involved in aircraft recognition, spotters, official spotters. When those kind of people report things, it's a lot different. So when we look at that, the ET case takes on a whole new case when we look at the agenda in the public domain. And that's what I have to work in, because I'm never going to have the ability and clearance to see the secret stuff. Yeah? So, that's what you've got to understand. But we've got to start talking about this. And yes, we talk about this, and David Caden, I don't know if he's still in the room. Oh, he's this big, but David Caden, mutilation expert. I'm not a mutilation expert, he is. But I know a fair bit about it. A worldwide phenomenon, as I mentioned yesterday for those that were here, where animals of all types are experiencing the same injuries, jaw strip, genitalia removed, no blood at sea, not predator. Animals disappearing in large numbers from warped fields, which is actually where David, just remembered, that's where it's just gone, on a mutilation case that he's following up with Richard D. Hall. That's where they shot off to Leicestershire on a case that's literally happened today that I think also took place last week. I've just remembered that. Okay? Now, if that was your cows and you were a farmer and you started to find animals like that, especially if it was in multiple numbers, you wouldn't be very happy. But what it shows is that there is a worldwide event involving some kind of agenda. Because the cow, I don't think, agreed to be killed. It wasn't asked. It was taken. It was murdered, for want of a better expression. Nobody gave that permission for that animal to be killed. It was taken. So when we talk about perhaps benign UFOs, there's a very good case, I think, for saying that UFOs are mainly interested in our welfare, because they've often turned up at times of crisis, been monitoring our nuclear capabilities, etc. But there's clearly an agenda that's not so nice by some species, because that's not nice. And as A.J. Girard was mentioned yesterday, he obtained some photographs of a mutilated man in Brazil. Was it Brazil? And if you know your stuff, some of those photographs have been widely publicised. But it's not the only human mutilation case. But they were displaying the same kind of physical injuries. So that person who died with those same injuries probably didn't give permission. Yeah, you can take this and you can do this to him. He was taken. So clearly some ET species are not very nice. And there are far too many people, perhaps in the world of ufology, who just think it's all sweetness and light. Oh, all the UFOs are here. In reality, I don't buy that. It isn't. If you are taken as a child in the abduction scenario, many people are terrified. Some come to terms with it throughout their life. Some even come to befriend and accept and lead to a new awakening of their place in the world of the cosmos. But believe me, for many it's a terrifying experience that they did not invite, did not want, and if they had a choice, they'd say, go away. They didn't have a choice, and they were taken. So clearly, in the abduction scenario, there are some species that have got an agenda that ain't that nice. Tim Good, who spoke at our first conference, mentioned a little about this, and I wasn't aware of it, but he mentioned it in his book. that he'd heard from various sources that there was possibly a 100-year ongoing genetic ET program. Which kind of makes sense, doesn't it, when you see these kind of things? The problem is, he didn't know when that program began. So are we in the middle of it? Are we the beginning of it? Are we near the end of it? Christ, it might be next year. What the hell happens then, if that was true? I don't know. But it's an interesting point, because why is this being done? If you take away and murder something, and you take their organs, it kind of invites the idea that there's some genetic reason why. Why are you taking genitalia? Why are men being abducted and having sperm removed? Why are women having medical experience to do with their reproductive organs? It clearly presents an image that something is happening by some species. Does it not? Or is that just me? I don't think so. People say to me, is ET disclosure imminent? It's a big word. And unfortunately, I have to disagree with Steve Bassett on this, because as much as I've met Steve Bassett, and he's an absolutely phenomenal speaker, many of you have heard him, I can't help but feel that it damages the subject of ufology when he keeps saying that disclosure will occur in 2014. It will occur in 2050. No doubt it's going to occur in 2060. Now the guy is trying his best, and I fully support him. The congressional hearings is the best thing I've ever been involved in, because it was tried to be done right, and it was done very classy. And for all of you, I'd urge you to look at it on the internet. There's some excellent testimony, especially from pilots like Colonel Oscar Santamaria from Peru, who chased in broad daylight a UFO, was ordered to shoot at it. He thought it was a balloon. He fired his weapons, and nothing happened when the bullets hit the object. He thought it was a balloon initially, and then suddenly, as he gets closer, he just goes about 10,000 feet in 3 seconds. Afterburner. Up he tries to chase it, and as soon as he gets there, he goes another 10,000 feet. This is a low level of technology that we can't deal with. Whether governments really know what's going on, I don't know. Interesting point. I suspect some people in industry and some very high-level people in government do, and science do know what's going on. But because I don't have the need to know, I can never prove that. And you hear all these things on the internet. There's so many websites that just say, oh, it's this, is it. Don't produce you any evidence. And this is why I get a bit annoyed, because as much as the internet is a great tool for education and contact and, in a sense, reaching out to people, far too many people, in my opinion, think there's a whole new world agenda and peace is coming to the world. I think that's bullshit. People want to believe that something's happening. In reality, the internet has created a monster. And the monster is called apathy. If you like this site, press like. Well, hey, I've got 5,000 likes. Oh, I'm really popular. Will you get off your ass and go to a UFO meeting? No, because I'm the armchair expert. I know everything. I can go to a million websites. I don't have to move. My cheeks can get really big. I know everything. But in reality, many of them know nothing. And unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, and it's being dumbed down, the rise of popular 8th grade television, I am a celebrity, Big Brother, you could argue is a bit of a tool by society to dumb you down, reduce minor people to minor celebrities. Oh, they're on the front page of the Daily Star. Hey, the world's dying over there, but by God, she won Big Brother. Front page, that's important news. And it sounds kind of crazy, but I do actually think that there is an element of dumbing this world down. But having said that, the people in this room, I want to give yourself a round of applause. Give yourself a round of applause. Right. But why do I do that? Because, as I said to people yesterday, if you got off your big small cheeks and paid your money and travelled in your car to get here, I applaud you. And you should be proud of yourselves for doing it. 4 people walked in yesterday, unannounced, didn't have the check. And do you know where they were from? They were from the pub opposite. They snuck in at a moment when people were distracted. Because they had these nuts over here. They were seen to walk out and they were sniggering. Oh, bloody nutters, this one. But clearly, we are not the nutters. And as Stanton Friedman said, do not be an apologist, ufologist. It's a great line, I've never heard it before, but it's quite a catchy line. Because I always say, I've never said it like that, but be proud of yourself, because your blinkers have been slightly removed. That's not to say everybody in this room believes in ET and aliens, but the mere fact that you can get off your ass and come here and have enough interest to find out is to your credit. And not how many of the people in this room, stick your hands up if you've had a UFO experience, stick your hand up, you don't have to show me. Well, that's quite a lot of people. Maybe 100, 120 people in a room of 270 people. That's a hell of a lot. But the sad indictment is, over the years, our society has created this monster of debunking. Stemming from the CIA, Robertson panel, earlier, but that was the key moment. Work with the media to dumb down the subject. Strip it, the aura, your flying saucers. A deliberate attempt to dumb it down. And it's worked ever since. Absolutely worked ever since. It's frightening that we live in this kind of world that's gone on for over 60 years that makes people frightened to come forward, even if they're a pilot, a military pilot, the risk getting grounded. What kind of world are we living in that we've allowed that to happen? And unfortunately, I don't see that system changing. Because when, and I've said it before, when Eisenhower said in 1960 in his closing speech as president, we must guard against the industrial military complex, the first time that phrase had ever been used. We must guard against big business and corporate and intelligence worlds taking over. I actually think we lost control then. And I don't know how you quite get that back in my evidential eye. Maybe we have to have a new cataclysm where everybody's killed and we have to build society again. But that's a bit extreme. But I don't see something changing soon. So is disclosure real? Is it close? Well, I don't think anybody in ufology has the power, influence to cause a breakthrough. That's sad, isn't it? Maybe if we had 10,000 people in a big auditorium all the time, maybe if people were marching through the streets, we want evidence, we want evidence, like you would do, say, with poll tax revolts. It doesn't happen very often now, because even trade union disputes have been made smaller. You can have 6, and now they're on about bringing legislation to make even the 6 even down smaller to allow more protest. It's crazy. The world we live in is pretty dangerous in many regards. There's a few scenarios. A lot of people say, oh, well, there's been disclosure in the UK and whatever. All the files that are released were low level. Most of it was correspondence. I have every single one of them, and I've looked through about 10,000, 12,000 pages, and most of it is boring, repetitive correspondence. But there are some nuggets in there, and the best nuggets are usually the loose minutes, the internal loose minutes from civil servants to civil servants. They often are the ones that interest me, because they'll say, what press line are we taking about this? And it's their internal talking about how do we deal with this bit of a good case. And then you'll get cases where they'll say, police officer case, a taken. And they're like, identified the police as maybe a better caliber of witnesses. So they're doing their own internal kind of auditing. But do they represent the best stuff? John Burroughs, who was one of the key witnesses in Rendlesham Forest, did some great FOI, Freedom of Information Report Act, research that basically said that they found another 18 files. Yet it was about 2 years after they said they released them all. And these are going to be policy files. And now they're arguing about when these will be released, because if they're policy files, it might be very interesting what's in them. But they have said that they are going to be released. But the point is, they said unequivocally, MOD, we've given you everything, everything. But they didn't. They lied. Some people are so naive to think that governments don't lie. Oh, they wouldn't do that. They do. People are given nerve gas in military things in the 50s. Oh, it's a cold cure. Just come in, you 6 soldiers, and sit there. We'll give you a little injection, and it's just a little cold cure example. But they're giving them Sarins, at a very low level, and they all die. And their families then sue for the next 35 years, trying to get the MOD to say that you did an illegal act. I've actually got a case, one of the very first lectures I ever made was based on, I think, a Daily Mail report on about exactly that. A woman, the wife of a soldier, who was supposed to be given a cold sample, was actually given a very small dose of sarin, lethal, I think, nerve agent. And he then died in a terrible pain. And his wife fought for 35 years. And the MOD said, no, we've got no record of this guy. We didn't do that. No. Eventually, after 35 years, she managed to get them to like a tribunal. And the MOD said, well, actually we did. Sorry about that. You give her a bit of compensation. But she thought for 35 years, she could have died and it would have gone away. But she was around long enough. Those kind of things happen, not with permission. Think about that. Governments do lie. They stick to what they want. Historically, the United States is the most secretive government in the world on UFOs. Britain, because of our special relationship, has usually followed hook, line and sinker and done everything they want. So we're one of the most secretive governments in the world. The reality is it's not like that all over the world though, as J.J. Gerard so aptly put yesterday. And I have to say that what A.J. Gerard and his Brazilian UFO researchers have done is incredible. For those of you who are not aware, he actually developed an official protocol with the Brazilian military and defence minister to occasionally sit down and discuss cases that they wish to disclose that they're asking. And can you imagine me as a UFO researcher saying to the MOD, oh, will you sit down with us and talk about release? No way. He sat down and got this protocol going on an official basis. So they sat around the table, and half of them are UFO researchers, and the rest are generals, admirals, high-ranking military people. That's an amazing thing. So A.J. Gerard is a hero for me. Okay. Now, a lot of people think that, and if you listen to Steve Bassett, I think he's kind of worried, because if the disclosure ever did come, not that I think it will through our means, he wants the USA, to be the first one to say, well, actually, we lied to you for 65 years. We did not. And we're sorry about that. We did it for your best intentions, and we thought you... They might try to say something like that, but it's going to cause some repercussions. Especially if it's not America. What if China, powerful country, what if India suddenly says, well, actually, we've been studying this for a long time, and Prime Minister stands up, the President says, eat Israel, we've known about it for a long time, sorry. And then America is not the first. And everybody's going to say, everybody's going to start disclosing the real stuff, the good cases, and it will quickly collapse when it does. And America will be seen to have turned up at every single major incident around the world, and the truth will emerge of their involvement and their lie upon lie upon lie. It's not a good scenario for the USA when and if disclosure does occur, because I think they'll be held to pay. So if America did disclose, I think it would cause a backlash. There would inevitably be some people who are frightened. I don't think it would be anything like Orson Welles and War of the Worlds and people off to the hills. I think we've gone beyond that. There may well have been some good reasons why they kept it secret in the early 40s, for fear of triggering a Third World War at a very volatile period of history. I don't understand that. But certainly I think that once the Soviet Union destroyed itself, there was an opportunity there to come clean and say, look, we have to deal with this. But it hasn't happened. I think this might happen. I think when those lies have been revealed for 65, 70 years, if not longer, a lot of people will then have no faith whatsoever in government on a big scale. We're already aware that there's possibility the government's lying. But people out in the street are oblivious, going out their daily lives, or oblivious, and perhaps better for not knowing. When they suddenly do know, I think there's going to be a bit of a backlash. The question is, how do we deal with it? Now, I kind of think that we should maybe use the South African way, truth and reconciliation hearing. Because we've got to move forward from these lies. But what we need to do is make these people accountable. So perhaps we should have the generals and colonels and presidents who actively lied, who made policy decisions, have them swear and say, I did it for this reason, whatever. Slap the wrist. What are we going to do? Shoot them? We're not having. It's wrong. But what can we do? We've got to move forward into a new reality of that situation. So I always thought that was a brilliant way they dealt with it. It could have been retribution, kill them all, take them all away, shoot them, firing squad, but it would have descended into chaos. I mean, he didn't. Mandela was very clever with the use of the truth and reconciliation. So I think if that scenario and there was a breakthrough tomorrow, there's going to be some backlash. We deal with it that way, in a civilised manner. Yes, say to the president who was involved in making that decision, did you make that, blah, blah, why did you make that, blah, blah. Put him on the stand. But once he's given his testimony, we move on. For the sake of humanity, we move on and build a new world. But it will build a new world of where people aren't going to be as so keen to believe what people say in government. There will be a new reality whenever that comes in. And I think there is a chance where we can maybe get away from this military-industrial complex and start building a world anew. But it's not imminent, as people think. It's not this year, next year. But I do think disclosure's coming. But here's my disclosure. In 2013, in widespread national media, mainstream media, it was widely reported in Britain, in all the newspapers, TV, that within 20 years of 2013, with the advancement of radio telescopes, that there were almost certainly within that 20 years going to detect an intellectual, intelligent signal. Not just a signal, an intelligent signal of a civilization. And that was in the mainstream. This isn't just off the wall, this is mainstream coverage. So if you think about that, they've set the clock ticking already. So in 2013, the answer is by 2033, which hopefully many of us will be around for to get to that time, it's almost certain that we will have to deal in the mainstream with this concept of contact officially. And we know it's going on already. But for the mainstream world, they don't know this. This is going to be a pretty big piece of news. There are only six major TV corporations that rule the world on what goes out. And none of them are playing our tune at the moment in terms of ufology and telling the truth. There is a monopoly. So we can't change it. We don't have the billions and influence of owning those TV stations to say, well, let's start changing the world. It's a cartel. We're not going to do it. But mainstream media and science and astronomy and everybody is going to have to realise that if they are accurate, with the advancement of radio telescopes, by 2033, we are going to be living in a world where it actually happens. We will be the first generations to be around when official contact actually takes place. You think about that, in the history of mankind, we will be the officially first generation. So something is, we are on the brink. And literally every day that goes by, there's new exoplanets found, blah, blah, blah. Goldilocks zones, not too hot, not too cold. Over 2,500 now exoplanets, very similar, not too hot, not too cold, but over the light conditions. But what they realise, almost in the mainstream, with everything that you read, 15 years ago, yeah, there might be life in the cosmos. 10 years ago, there probably is life. Now it's almost certain, even mainstream are saying, it's probably teeming, we just can't get around the distances, blah, blah, blah. But a nonsensical kind of argument, really, because I've never understood it. I'm just a basic guy, I'm not that clever. But common sense says to me that if a civilization develops 500 years ahead of Earth time, or 1 million years ahead of Earth time, they're not going to be riding around in jet engine planes and petrol-driven cars. And that new methods of propulsion will have developed. And here's the concept, just in 400 years, we talk about Leonardo da Vinci, one of the cleverest people in history. But if we handed him an iPad and said, how does that work, Leonardo? Would he be able to work it out? I think that's too big a leap for him, even as a clever guy, to have a clue. But that's just 400 years. What if a civilization is 1 million years older than us? And the Earth is a very young planet going around a young star in astronomical terms. So it's highly likely that there are civilizations out there that are millions of years ahead of us in Earth time development. So you're telling me that they're not going to get bigger, faster, quicker than us? That we're all going to develop at the same rate? It don't make sense. In 500 years' time. Look where we've just come in technological terms, just in the last 100 years. 1909, the Wright brothers. 1903, the Wright brothers. Look how far we go. iPads, remote controls. I mean, it's wireless technology. It's incredible. And it's accelerating exponentially beyond where we could ever be. Nobody could predict how fast we're moving. They've even got teleportation at a very small level. They've proven that teleportation works. They've moved little things from there to there on a minute scale. The technology will develop. So it's a ludicrous argument, and it's the sceptic having this narrow field of vision. And as Stanton would say, it can't be, so it isn't. Would these guys play by our rules on? Maybe these guys might change the agenda. Maybe when it comes out in 2033, we then have to deal with the fact that there's, well actually we know of about 12 species, 500 species that have been coming here over the years. It's going to be a revelation. And this isn't science fiction, we're going to have to deal with it at the very latest by 2033. That's probably within most of our lifetime. They might not go to the President of the United States when they come forward. They might be watched from afar and say you're a warlike civilization, you treat people like dogs, you kill most of the people around the world, you constantly war, you're warlike, you're not ready to join the galactic civilization. It would be a bad summary, really, would it? You know, people say land on the wireless. Well, you get shot if you land on the wireless. You know, it's daft, but in reality, that's what happens. We are a warlike race with wars going all over the world. There's a small percentage of us who've got this greedy, and most people are nice. We have this greed, that we've got this loose cannon in us. And it's governments that want to take us to war. It's not people like me and you want to fight somebody else in Afghanistan, whatever. Governments make those decisions, political, geopolitical. So maybe the answer is their agenda might not be ours. Who would represent us with ET? Which people? Would it be the President? Or would it be Steve Bassett? Might it be J.J. Javard with his Brazilian? Might it be Roberto Panotti who suggested a protocol for contact? And it was published in the magazine. Could it be me? Somebody would say, hey, well, no, no. I somehow don't think so. What would happen if there was disclosure tomorrow? Or suddenly there'd be this mass explosion and people say, Steve Bassett would say, oh, you're all going to be superstars and rich. I don't want to be rich, I just want to tell the truth. And yes, for a time, mainstream media go, hey, let's say on BBC, like, oh, you don't have it, we know, we're so sorry. But with disclosure comes all the real people who knew what was going on all the years. So the scientists have come out who have been secret working on it. All the military people who have been doing secret reports on it will come out and they'd have their own spokespeople. Only problem is, E.T. may have been watching and thinking, you're a bit right arse a bit. Don't like you. I like these guys. We don't know what they're thinking. And maybe they change the agenda. Maybe they go, well, government's lied all the time. We've been watching you for years. I like these guys. Maybe we'll approach these guys, diplomats for planet Earth. I don't think so. It'd be nice though, wouldn't it? That we could try to get away from this corporation greed. Get away from wars all over the world that are unnecessary, geopolitical wars. People saying, yeah, well, this is our plan to go into the Middle East in 1991. This is how it's going to look. We're going to destabilise all these countries. People have gone on record. Things are planned years in advance. Some work out, some not. You're telling me that, without getting into politics, anybody foresaw that messing around with Libya would lead to this mass exodus, the biggest movement of refugees since the Second World War? Some might think that the people who dabbled and thought, oh, we'll just play around with the politics of Libya and that kind of area in the Middle East, didn't realise what was going on. And now they're thinking, oh, I wish we could go back in time, because we've got these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on the march, and creating this human, terrible tragedy that's unfolding before us. So the answer is probably we wouldn't, as UFO researchers, be the people. I somehow think that they're trying to go back to the old school. And people who've been working on it secretly would, you're just ufology, what would you know? We're the people who've been working on it. So I don't think we get a look, to be honest. We know from history that there are significant moments in history. The modern era of ufology really begins with that. The two things, the Kenneth Arnold sighting in June 47, and then a couple of weeks later, the Roswell event. Seminal moments. We know that there was an estimate of the situation, a document that studied the UFO reports, really, the first 1,000 or so, from 47, 48, that concluded that UFOs were interplanetary. We know it exists because Edward Ruppel, who wrote the book, the great book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, which is where the UFO term was really coined, he said he saw a copy. They were all supposed to be destroyed, but he admitted there was a copy. So we know that this is a real phenomenon, but you're just not being told the truth. The battle for the media. We talked about this Keepo. He was put off on live. He was getting military people who wanted disclosure. They were telling him, oh, we've got this great case happened yesterday. But then we're giving him the files. He was well placed. That's why he created NICAP, the organisation which was then infiltrated by spies who worked from within to get into high positions and then destroyed it from within. And some people might argue that Bufora went the same way. Hence why I like not to have that many people close around me. Because nobody can tame me. Because there's just me with the magazine. And the same with AJ. It makes you be a little bit wary, because the classic thing is you destroy from within. You infiltrate and then you start working again. Disinformation destroys the organisation. Steve, do you agree with that? I agree, yeah. Okay. Okay. Have we got a willing media at the moment to take it on? Probably not. They're going to be kicking and screaming before they accept that the world is on the brink of something that's going to change. Somebody give me 10 minutes, please, from Kaylee. When you give me 10 minutes on the clock, just do that to me. Because I'm wandering around. Okay. Let's think about this. we're in a time where we're really going to have to make some major cataclysm developments if this disclosure takes place by 2033. What I suggest is something will happen in the next 5 years that says there is life on Mars. I've spoken to several journalists who unofficially have said, well, we've been waiting on this story for ages. Microscopic life has been found on Mars. Probably known about it for a long time, but they're going to admit it. Okay, so they admit it's all in the national media. There's a breakthrough! Christ, we've got life. Age-old question, is there life out there? Hey! So we all feel vindicated. But then the skeptics will go, but it's not sentient life. Because that'll be the next debate. Now we want intelligent. But the real question was, is there life out there? As soon as we get one anywhere, whether it's microscopic or fossilised or anything, life is life. It was life. What's that happen? The very first brick in the dam of disclosure will slip out. Probably unnoticed. This is what, as soon as life is admitted anywhere, the little brick comes out and water starts dripping. In my opinion. But that could quickly change to a really big situation. Because we know that in 2033 it's happening. 2033 is coming. So what I suspect is that in the run-up to that, mainstream media are going to go, this is imminent, we're told by mainstream science, this is imminent. We are going to be the first people to be around when contact is officially made. We're going to have to deal with this UFO account, because they're not the nutters we thought they were. We're going to have life. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to change our attitudes. So I suspect that disclosure will come before 2033. As the TV companies and global corporations begin to think, well, actually, we are on the brink. We're going to have to deal with this. We're going to have to start addressing it. We're going to have to start giving these people maybe a little bit of credit. Because it's going to happen. And suddenly, we're going to be dealing with ET. So there's going to have to be a major attitude shift. So I think in the run-up to 2033, probably within 5 to 10 years ahead of that, there will be a noticeable change in the mainstream as they prepare for the inevitable. Because astronomy, mainstream astronomy, it's not us ufologists saying it, mainstream astronomy is saying that this is imminent. So we are going to have to come to terms with it. Does that make sense? And they are going to have, well, not me and you, we were already to terms with it. The mainstream are going to have to say, we're going to have to do something here. It could be tomorrow, it might be next year, but it's coming by 2033. So they're going to have to reevaluate all of ufology and accept that once that dam breaks, yes, there's contact, the argument against UFOs completely destroyed and the dam, and it will break very quickly. Because what arguments are left? As soon as we have civilized contact, we know that the game's over, don't we? We're not going to have a choice. We're not going to say, oh, you know, it's a lot of rubbish. No, just keep it secret a bit longer. Humanity is not going to have that luxury. We are going to have to deal with it. And they are going to have to deal with it. And as I keep trying to say to people, this is unprecedented times. How often do you live on the edge of an epoch moment? And everybody says that when official contact is made, it will be the most significant moment in human history. Now we all think that's already happened multiple times and is ongoing. Not in the mainstream. So the reawakening is really not with us. We're already awakened to a degree. But the mainstream, you know, I've often said that when I'm doing a lecture, I'm not aiming to talk and convince you in this room, because you're already the ones with the blinkers up, you're the clever ones. I want to try to reach the guy on the street who's oblivious to the train crash that's coming his way. Does that make sense? There is a massive train crash about to happen. Not through our doing, because of political intrigue, lies, and power. And the oil companies wanted to disclose that there's probably free energy found years ago, that they maybe harnessed the technology of anti-gravity, and we don't need oil and gas and fossil fuels. And that maybe 50 years ago we could have got rid of the car, and we could have free energy, and we could solve the world's debt problems, health problems. Now, look, I like my profits, I'm a billionaire, I don't want to give them up. If I invent a car that runs on fresh air, they're going to either kill me, buy me off with a patent, and say, hey, we'll buy a patent on you. Never to be over again. That has happened. Allegedly. Logical. Does Shell and BP want to give up all its profits? Yeah, they want to keep that going. Humanity is quite greedy. So think about this. There's a hell of a lot to change. And say they do find a signal. What happens if the signal says, okay, nice to meet you, we'll be there next week? Because we're a million years ahead of it. A million years ahead of us. We'll see you next week. Is that not a real possibility with the methods proportion that they now have? A million years ahead of us? In Earth time development? Pretty possible, isn't it? And then was it Stephen Hawking says, maybe, well, he said until recently, maybe we shouldn't put that signal out and say hello. Because what happens if they're not too friendly? Well, we've kind of already discussed that, because it's almost certainly that some species aren't too friendly with the human mutilations, animal mutilation, abductions. That's not friendly in the majority of cases. All the arguments that the media have had for all this years of suppression is about to go out the window. Mainstream media, kicking and screaming, are going to be dragged to the table. They can't shove it away. We don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. They are going to have to deal with it big style. Okay? Now, I'm going to do something now a bit different, in the sense of, and I've already just noticed you there, Simon. Alright, so from my point of view, with your permission, I want to talk for 10 more minutes. Tino, how long have we got? How long have I got left?
It's 4:25.
4:25, right. The next break, will you give me 10 minutes? Because there's a guy turned up who's been making. So that concludes my talk. Okay? I want to build in 10 minutes for this guy. Alright, thank you.